We weren't supposed to be in the morgue of St. Mary's Hospital that night. 3 seconds of pure darkness surrounds us as we enter the abandoned building. Help me. The whisper comes from nowhere and everywhere at once. Our night vision cameras catch it first. The morgue drawer sliding open with no one touching it. The sound of metal against metal pierces the silence. Something moves across the hallway at the edge of our frame. Too fast to be human, too solid to be shadow. Our team member Alex backs away frantically from something our cameras can't fully capture. His face shows pure terror as he points toward the empty corner. What did he see? We'll analyze that footage later. The building has been abandoned for decades, yet something still occupies these halls. The audio spikes without warning at 45 seconds in, a horrific scratching sound like metal being dragged across concrete. None of us made that noise. We found something in that drawer later, a patient identification tag, partially visible with a date from the 1960s, and what appears to be a brownish red stain along its edge. The hospital records claim all patient remains were properly transferred when this place shut down. So why does it feel like someone or something is still here waiting for us? And why does it seem to know we've arrived? St. Mary's Hospital stands 3 stories tall against the night sky, its broken windows like dark eyes watching our approach. According to local newspaper clippings from 1963, this place was once the scene of unexplained patient death, 17 in a single month, all without clear medical cause. The official investigation was suddenly terminated without explanation. As we enter through the shattered emergency room doors, our equipment begins to behave strangely. The MF meters fluctuate wildly near certain rooms, particularly the surgical wing and basement access point. The hospital has been abandoned since 1991, yet something about it feels occupied, as if time stopped rather than life departing. At 2 minutes 15 seconds, pay close attention to the broken mirror in the main corridor. There's a reflection that doesn't match any member of our 4-person team. We only noticed this during video review as none of us saw it in real time. The patient log we discovered on the reception desk shows something impossible. Admission dates from 1995, 1998, and even 2003, years after this hospital was officially closed. Who was admitting patients to an abandoned hospital? And more disturbing, where did these patients go? Listen carefully to the background audio throughout this segment. Those footsteps don't belong to our team. We were all standing still during this recording. This place isn't as abandoned as the official records claim. The 3rd floor administrative offices yielded our first significant discovery. Buried under 3 decades of dust and debris, we found a doctor's identification badge belonging to Dr. Samuel Winters, Chief of Experimental Medicine. No department by that name appears in any official hospital documentation we could find. The badge was warm to the touch, despite the freezing temperatures inside the building. As we were examining the ID, all 3 of our cameras captured the same unexplainable event, the heavy wooden door to the office closing by itself with significant force. There was no draft in the building, all windows were sealed shut. We've analyzed this footage from multiple angles and at reduced speed. Watch closely as the door moves. You can see what appears to be a shadow with distinctly human outlines pulling it closed, though no physical person was present. At 4 minutes 27 seconds, focus your attention on the partially open morgue drawer visible in the background. We've enhanced and stabilized this footage. Those are clearly fingers slowly curling over the edge of the metal drawer. Our team was standing together in front of the cameras during this entire sequence. The temperature dropped dramatically in this moment, falling nearly 20 degrees in seconds. Our breath became visible, and equipment batteries began draining at an alarming rate. That's when we captured the first clear EV's electronic voice phenomenon on our audio recorders. A distinct whisper saying "still practicing" came through all devices simultaneously. None of us heard this in real time, only during review. The medical records we found scattered throughout this office referenced experimental procedures not consistent with standard medical practice of the era. Patient consent forms contain signatures that appear identical despite different patient names. Something deeply unethical was happening at St. Mary's, and whatever remains here wants us to know about it. We managed to locate and interview Frank Daniels, who worked as a janitor at St. Mary's from 1958 until its closure. His account provides disturbing context to our investigation. According to Frank, the hospital's basement level contained restricted areas where only certain staff members were permitted. He described hearing strange sounds during night shifts, mechanical humming, and what he described as voices speaking in unison from behind locked doors. The hospital records we obtained through Freedom of Information request reference special procedures conducted in basement sections marked only as departments on internal map. These procedures were scheduled exclusively between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. with no details of their nature documented in regular medical records. We've acquired several black and white photographs of the original hospital staff from the early 1960s. In each group photo, one particular face appears deliberately blurred or obscured, not through damage to the photograph, but as if intentionally altered before archiving. The name tag visible on this obscured figure appears to read Dr. W in the clearest image. Our research reveals a disturbing pattern connecting patient disappearances to full moon cycles throughout the hospital's operational history. Between 1961 and 1986, 43 patients vanished without explanation, 37 of these during full moons. Official reports attribute these to patients leaving against medical advice, but family testimonies contradict these claims. Pay particular attention to the background at 6 minutes 58 seconds. The nurse's uniform hanging on the wall storage hook moves slightly despite no air circulation in the sealed records room. We've ruled out team movement causing this disturbance. Most damning is a document we discovered showing the hospital director, Dr. Howard Whitfield, was under investigation by the State Medical Board for unethical experimental procedures just weeks before the hospital's sudden closure. The investigation was terminated the same day the hospital shut down, with all records sealed by court order. Whatever happened at St. Mary's Hospital was deliberately concealed, and our evidence suggests something remains behind, perhaps still trapped in the cycle of those final days. The psychiatric ward on the second floor marked the point where our investigation took a darker turn. As we entered the main corridor, all of our flashlights began flickering simultaneously without explanation. Fresh batteries installed just 30 minutes earlier drained completely within seconds. The darkness seemed to move around us, thicker in some areas than others. Our backup lights functioned only intermittently, as if something was selectively drawing power from our equipment. The EMF meter reading spiked dramatically near a patient restraint chair bolted to the floor in what appeared to be a treatment room. The needle jumped to maximum readings beyond what electromagnetic fields from old wiring could possibly produce. When team member Jessica approached the chair, the device shorted out completely, emitting smoke from its circuits. No conventional power source could explain this reaction. Review the footage at 8 minutes 15 seconds carefully. We've enhanced the contrast and brightness. During the camera's static, a distinct figure becomes visible standing in the doorway. None of us saw this during filming, only during review. The figure appears to be wearing what resembles a doctor's coat, but its face is distorted in a way that defies explanation. It stands perfectly still, watching our team before disappearing when the static clears. Our comparison footage shows the stark difference. The split screen demonstrates the empty hallway as it appeared to us versus what the camera actually captured, a distinct shadow figure moving along the wall at a pace matching our own. It seems to be following precisely 10 feet behind us throughout this entire sequence. The movement is too consistent to be a lighting anomaly or equipment malfunction. The thermal imaging camera revealed something equally disturbing. A human-shaped cold spot approximately 5 degrees colder than the surrounding area followed our movement down the corridor. It maintained exact distance behind team member Mark, occasionally reaching what appears to be an arm-like extension toward him. The cold spot disappeared precisely at the boundary of the psychiatric ward, refusing to follow us into the next section of the hospital. When reviewing this footage, we noticed something even more unsettling. As Jason checked his reflection in a remaining mirror fragment, his face momentarily distorted in the glass, features shifting into something unrecognizable for approximately 3 seconds before returning to normal. Jason had no awareness of this occurring during filming. Our investigation reached its first climax in the hospital morgue. This large, tile-lined room contains 6 autopsy tables and a wall of 24 body storage drawers. The temperature here registered a constant 45 degrees despite no functioning cooling system. We conducted an EV session asking directed questions toward whatever entity might remain in this space. The results exceeded anything in our previous investigation. When we asked what happened to the missing patients, our audio equipment captured a chillingly clear response. Still practicing. This voice matches no team member and contains frequency patterns outside normal human vocal range. Audio analysis shows harmonics in the response that suggest multiple voices speaking in perfect unison, creating an unsettling chorus effect rather than a single voice. During this session, all 4 team members simultaneously observed a figure at the far end of the morgue. It appeared as a dark silhouette with the distinct shape of a person wearing what looked like surgical attire, complete with what seemed to be a head mirror reflector. The figure remained visible for approximately 7 seconds before fading from view. All team members described identical details independently when separated for questioning. The most compelling evidence occurred when investigator Mark approached one of the body storage drawers. Without anyone touching it, the heavy metal drawer slowly extended outward with an audible scraping sound. Inside was nothing but dust, except for a single surgical glove that appeared to have been recently used, still containing moisture. When tested later, this moisture was revealed to be consistent with human perspiration, though impossible to have remained present in an abandoned building for decades. The audio recording during this moment captured whispered voices too faint for human ears in real time, but clearly audible in enhanced playback. These voices repeat medical terminology and procedure names consistent with 1960s experimental medicine, particularly focused on brain and nervous system manipulation. Terms like frontal separation and consciousness transfer can be distinctly heard. Most disturbing was the discovery of unexplained scratch marks that formed on investigator Sarah's arm during this session. 3 distinct lines appeared gradually over a 20-minute period, with no physical contact or explanation for their formation. Medical examination later showed these scratches contained traces of surgical antiseptic last manufactured in 1972. Simultaneously, Sarah's mobile phone, which had no signal inside the building, received a text message with no sender information. The message contained a single word: basement. The hospital chapel provided a startling contrast to the oppressive darkness we'd been navigating. Sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, creating colorful patterns across dusty pews. This brief respite from the shadows initially seemed peaceful, until we realized what was wrong. It was 11 p.m. There should have been no sunlight. The windows somehow projected daylight despite the night outside, an optical phenomenon with no scientific explanation. As we documented this impossibility, distinct sounds of children laughing echoed from the direction of the pediatric ward 2 floors above us. The hospital records show the pediatric unit was permanently closed in 1975 after multiple unexplained incidents involving child patients. No children have set foot in this building for nearly 50 years. Yet the laughter sounded fresh and immediate. Our camera equipment began malfunctioning in new ways when pointed towards specific areas of the chapel. The image would blur or distort when focused on the altar area or the confessional booth, but functioned normally elsewhere. This selective interference pattern suggests an intelligence directing the disturbances rather than general equipment failure. Viewers should pay special attention at 14 minutes 17 seconds. We've circled the area on screen where a small figure becomes visible behind the frosted glass of the chapel office door. The figure appears to be child-sized, but moves with unnatural jerking motions before disappearing when team member Jason approaches the door. The door was locked and showed no signs of recent entry. The evidence became more compelling with our before and after documentation. We photographed the dusty chapel piano upon entering. Then again 20 minutes later, The second image clearly shows small handprints that appeared in the dust while we were investigating the opposite side of the room. No one approached the piano during this time, and the handprints are distinctly child-sized. That our most disturbing discovery came when checking the chapel storage closet. Inside, we found children's crayon drawings pinned to the back wall, the paper and colors remarkably fresh. These drawings consistently depicted a tall, dark figure with distinctive red eyes standing among groups of children. Patient records indicate similar drawings were reported among child patients in the months before the pediatric ward's closure, often from children who had no contact with each other. The most recent drawing was dated 1 week ago. The hospital administrator's office yielded our most significant discovery: original blueprint, revealing major discrepancies with the building's actual construction. These documents show an extensive network of rooms and corridors that don't appear on any official hospital plans filed with the city. Most notably, a series of chambers beneath the listed basement level, accessible only through a single stairwell hidden behind the morgue storage area. We consulted audio specialist Dr. Elena Kazan to analyze the EP recordings captured throughout the building. Her analysis revealed something unprecedented in paranormal research. The voices contained what she termed layered consciousness signatures, multiple distinct voices speaking in perfect synchronization, creating the audio illusion of a single voice. According to Dr. Kazan, this pattern suggests either coordinated entities or a single consciousness manifesting through multiple energy signatures. The thermal mapping of the entire hospital revealed a pattern too precise to be coincidental. When overlaid with hospital death records, the coldest areas of the building correspond exactly to locations where patients died under unusual circumstances. The morgue shows expected temperature variations, but the surgical theaters and certain patient rooms display cold spots in perfect alignment with documented death locations. Most significant is the temperature gradient that forms a distinct path from these locations toward the hidden basement access point, as if energy is being channeled in that direction. The tension builds as we approach the hidden basement entrance. Our equipment begins reacting more violently, with each step batteries draining, static increasing, and EMF readings spiking beyond measurable levels. The air becomes noticeably thick, making breathing difficult and speech labored. Something is clearly attempting to prevent our descent while simultaneously drawing us forward. We pose a critical question for viewers to consider. What connects the strange symbol carved into the basement door with identical markings found scratched into surfaces throughout the third floor? These symbols don't match any known medical or scientific notation from the period, yet appear deliberately placed at locations corresponding to patient death. The most compelling connection emerged when comparing Dr. Whitfield's office location with the morgue and surgical theaters. These spaces form a perfect geometric pattern when viewed on the blueprint, an equilateral triangle with the hidden basement room at its center. This configuration matches esoteric medical theories published by Dr. Whitfield in obscure journals, proposing that consciousness could be harvested and redirected through proper geometric alignment of energy transfer points. The hospital's very architecture appears designed as a mechanism for some unknown purpose, rather than merely a medical facility. The investigation took a deeply personal turn when our camerawoman Rachel suddenly refused to continue toward the basement level. Her reaction was immediate and visceral, something we've never witnessed from her in 3 years of paranormal investigations. She described feeling cold fingers brush against the back of her neck while filming alone in the corridor, followed by a distinct sense of being watched from behind. When she turned, she claims to have seen a man in a doctor's coat with completely black eyes standing at the far end of the hallway, watching her. Rachel's description matches no known staff member from the hospital's operational period, yet is remarkably similar to patient descriptions of the night. Doctor found in psychiatric patient journals from the 1960s. These patients consistently described a physician who visited only after midnight, with eyes like empty holes. The matching details across decades is difficult to dismiss as coincidence. Our night vision footage caught a brief but clear glimpse of a figure in a white coat turning a corner at the end of the hallway. When our team investigated, The corridor ended in a solid wall with no possible exit. The thermal imaging camera showed even more compelling evidence. A human-shaped cold spot approximately 10 degrees colder than the surrounding air followed Rachel for several minutes before dissipating. The outline is clearly visible, moving independently of any team member, occasionally extending what appears to be an arm toward her. The personal experience is extended beyond visual phenomena. While reviewing audio recordings, team member David discovered that when rewinding his personal recorder, a voice clearly said "Welcome back," though no such voice was heard during the initial recording. This suggests that whatever inhabits this space can interact with our equipment in ways that transcend normal physical limitations, possibly manipulating the recording itself, rather than simply being captured by it. Perhaps most unsettling was the discovery that our personal items left in the base camp room had been rearranged during our absence. Backpacks were opened, equipment moved to different positions, and most disturbingly, Rachel's notebook had been flipped open to a blank page with a single word written in dust: "Continue." None of our team was in this room during the 2-hour period when these changes occurred, and the hospital's sealed condition makes outside interference impossible. The culmination of these personal experiences created a psychological pressure that nearly ended our investigation prematurely. The entity appears capable of targeting individuals based on their specific fears or vulnerabilities, suggesting an intelligence that can perceive and exploit human psychology, rather than merely creating random paranormal phenomena. With extreme caution, our remaining team finally entered the restricted basement area hidden behind the false wall in the morgue storage room. The narrow staircase descended far deeper than the building's official specifications indicated, suggesting this area was intentionally concealed from hospital plans. The air grew increasingly cold and dense as we descended, making breathing difficult and communication strained. Our voices seemed to echo strangely, as if in a much larger space than the narrow stairwell should allow. Upon reaching the bottom, we discovered a heavy metal door marked only with the symbol we'd seen throughout the hospital. As our lights illuminated the door, it suddenly slammed shut behind us with tremendous force, sealing off our exit route. Multiple team members attempted to force it open without success, as if something far stronger than the old mechanism was holding it closed. In this moment, all of our electronic equipment failed simultaneously. Cameras, audio recorders, and lights. The batteries didn't simply drain but completely died, showing corrosion as if they had been exposed to strong acid. The backup chemical light sticks we activated revealed the true nature of the hidden facility. The walls were lined with what appeared to be patient observation rooms, each with a viewing window and strange equipment that resembled no standard medical devices from any era. In the center stood an operating table surrounded by mirrored panels arranged in a precise geometric pattern. The temperature in this central area registered just below freezing despite the summer heat outside. As we attempted to document the space with our remaining functional camera, multiple shadow figures began appearing in different corners of the room, visible to all team members simultaneously. These weren't the vague shapes often reported in haunted locations, but distinctly human outlines with clearly defined features that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. They moved with purpose between the observation rooms, seemingly recreating some routine or procedure that once occurred here. The most compelling evidence came when a full apparition manifested in the doorway of the main chamber. The figure, clearly visible for approximately 3 seconds, appeared as a man in surgical attire consistent with 1960s medical practice. Unlike the shadowy figures, this apparition had distinct features, though its face seemed to shift between different appearances, as if multiple identities were attempting to manifest through a single form. The temperature dropped so dramatically that our breath crystallized in the air, and condensation on the walls froze into intricate patterns that resembled the symbols found throughout the hospital. From inside the sealed morgue drawers lining one wall came loud, rhythmic banging sounds, as if something was attempting to force its way out from inside. When team member Mark approached one of the drawers, he found himself temporarily unable to move or call for help. As if paralyzed by proximity to the phenomenon, The drawer began to open on its own before the sudden reactivation of our equipment disrupted whatever force was at work. The unexplained cessation of these phenomena, coinciding exactly with our equipment restarting, suggests an entity that can manipulate electromagnetic fields and possibly draw energy from electronic devices. After extensive analysis of all gathered evidence, we've developed a comprehensive theory that connects the disparate phenomena experienced throughout St. Mary's Hospital. The basement facility appears to have been the center of unauthorized experiments conducted by hospital director Dr. Whitfield, focused on what his recovered journal describes as consciousness transference and preservation. The journal, found hidden in a false bottom of a medication cabinet, details procedures for what he believed would allow the human consciousness to exist independently of the physical body. These experiments allegedly progressed from theoretical to practical application between 1961 and 1967, using patients from the psychiatric ward as unwilling subjects. According to Whitfield's detailed notes, he believed certain individuals with particular psychological profiles could serve as vessels for consciousness storage. The journal references successful partial transfers in consciousness echoes that persisted after the death of the original subject. Most disturbing are his notes about layering multiple consciousness patterns into a single host, creating what he termed a collective mind state. The final crucial piece of evidence comes from patient records showing an unusual consistency in reported time of death. 43 patients over a 26-year period were pronounced dead at exactly 3:17 a.m., statistical impossibility in normal hospital operation. This precise timing corresponds with notations in Whitfield's journal about optimal transfer conditions occurring during the void hour between 3:0 and 4:0 a.m., when he believed the barrier between physical and non-physical existence was most permeable. Our analysis reveals that the manifestations throughout the hospital follow a precise geometric pattern matching the architectural design. The building itself appears constructed as a kind of consciousness capture mechanism, with the morgue, psychiatric ward, and surgical theater forming points of a triangle focusing energy toward the hidden basement facility. This explains why phenomena increase in intensity as one moves deeper into the building's core areas. Viewers should pay special attention at 25 minutes 37 seconds of our footage. During review, we discovered a symbol briefly appearing on the basement wall that wasn't visible during our investigation. This symbol matches exactly the one found in Whitfield's journal labeled as the anchor sigil used to bind consciousness to physical locations. The fact that this symbol appears in our footage but wasn't seen in person suggests the entity can manipulate perception selectively, including what electronic devices record versus what human observers perceive. This evidence collectively suggests that rather than traditional ghosts or spirits, what inhabits St. Mary's Hospital may be the fragmented consciousness of multiple individuals artificially bound to the location through Whitfield's experiments. These consciousness fragments appear to draw energy from the fear and emotional responses of the living, explaining why paranormal activity intensifies when investigators experience heightened emotional state. The intelligent responses and increasingly complex interactions suggest these fragments have formed a collective entity that retains aspects of human awareness while operating outside normal physical constraints. Our escape from the hospital came at significant cost. Though all team members physically left the building, unexplainable marks appeared on our skin in the following day's patterns matching the symbols found throughout the hospital. Medical examination could provide no explanation for these marks, which faded after approximately 72 hours. More concerning were the persistent symptoms team members reported: insomnia, vivid nightmares featuring the hospital corridors, and the sensation of being watched, particularly during the early morning hours. The aftermath of our investigation proved more disturbing than the experience itself. Team members began reporting unusual activity in their homes, objects moving without explanation, electronic devices activating spontaneously, and most alarmingly, the distinct sound of metal scraping against metal reminiscent of the morgue drawers opening. These occurrences follow a pattern, always intensifying between 3:0 and 4:40 a.m. The same void hour referenced in Whitfield's research. Home security footage from Rachel's apartment captured definitive evidence that something followed us from St. Mary's. 2 weeks after our investigation, her bedroom camera recorded a distinct shadow figure standing at the foot of her bed at exactly 3:17 a.m. The figure matches precisely the appearance of the doctor she observed in the hospital corridor, including the unnatural darkness where eyes should be. The recording additionally captured a temperature drop of 15 degrees in the immediate vicinity of the figure, consistent with the cold spots documented throughout the hospital. We've made an extraordinary discovery during our review of exterior footage. At 29 minutes 15 seconds, we've enhanced and stabilized the frame showing the hospital windows from outside the building. For precisely 3 frames, every window simultaneously shows watching figures, different individuals in each window, all staring directly at our camera position. This occurred during our exit from the property and was not visible to any team member at the time. The implications are staggering. Not just a single entity, but potentially dozens of consciousness fragments inhabit the structure, all aware of and responding to our presence. The final evidence came in the form of an EVP captured without any recording equipment running. Team member Mark's voice memo application on his phone activated itself 3 days after our investigation, recording 17 seconds of audio without human initiation. The clear whispered message, "You brought us home." Technical analysis confirms the voice pattern matches EVP captured within the hospital, suggesting whatever consciousness resides there now exists, at least partially, outside the physical constraints of the building itself. We cannot ignore the implications of our findings at St. Mary's Hospital. Whatever Dr. Whitfield created through his experiments has persisted long after his death and the abandonment of the facility. More concerning is its apparent ability to attach to investigators and expand its influence beyond its original confine. Next week, our team returns to St. Mary's with paranormal experts and protective measures to understand what exactly followed us home and how to address an entity that exists simultaneously in multiple states of consciousness. The final question remains, did we simply document this phenomenon, or did our investigation somehow strengthen it? The drawer that contained nothing during our initial search was found containing Mark's lost flashlight. When we reviewed our footage placed there sometime after we left the building entirely,